I'm Toby, I'm 12 years old and in Year 7.
My name's Lacey, I'm in Year 7 and I'm 11 years old.
My name is Finn and I am in Year 7. I would call an ambulance and wait with them and try to stop the bleed.
I'd ring an ambulance because I wouldn't really necessarily know what to do.
I wouldn't feel that confident because I've not really done it before.
Not very.
Today, we're going to look at how you can stop the bleed and potentially save a person's life. Hi, my name's Pinky and I'm a junior doctor working in Manchester. I've spent some time working in the Children's A&E department, and here we see a variety of cases including trauma and injury. Serious bleeding doesn't happen too often, but when it does, whether it happens to yourself, a friend, or a family member, it can be really useful to know some simple steps to help that person. We're going to cover identifying a bleed and how to stop or slow the bleed long enough for the injured person to get medical attention. We'll also take a look at packing a wound and using a tourniquet to stop a bleed.
Hi, I'm Nigel and I'm a paramedic. My role today is to help you to learn how to save a life if someone is bleeding. As a paramedic, I've been called to lots of people with life-threatening injuries, and some of those patients were only alive when we arrived because someone knew how to control the bleeding. I'm going to be showing you some of the practical steps that you can take if you find yourself in a situation where you need to help someone who is bleeding. There are many different scenarios that might arise in your day-to-day life where you might need to provide some basic medical assistance to a person. This could be anything from a violent incident, such as a stabbing or a fight. It could be an injury at school, college or work, a car accident, an animal attack, or even an explosion. And this isn't just about helping other people either. The steps that we're going to talk you through can even be used to save your own life.
The most important thing to take away from this film is that taking some form of action could save someone's life. Even something simple like applying pressure to a wound could buy the emergency services enough time to save a life. The very first thing to do in any situation where you or someone else is bleeding is to assess the wound to decide what type of treatment or help they require. You'll need to make sure you can clearly see the wound. You may need to rip, cut, or remove any items of clothing to be able to see and assess the wound. There are three main types of blood vessels that can be damaged when someone is injured: arteries, veins, and capillaries. If the wound is squirting or pulsating with blood, this means that the bleeding is life-threatening. This happens when the bleeding is coming from an artery or a vein. In this situation, you should take immediate action. If there is only a trickle of blood, this means that it is unlikely to be life-threatening, but you should still try to stop the bleeding. It's important in a life-threatening situation that you call the emergency services. If you're on the phone to the emergency services, try to give them as much detail as possible about what you're doing and make sure you stay on the line. They will be able to help you. Also, try your best to reassure the person and keep them calm during this process. The size of the wound isn't something to worry about too much. The process is the same regardless.
So now that you have identified the wound, the next thing is to try to stop the bleeding. You will need to find the exact point of bleeding, and this could be at any one part of the wound. If there's an object lodged into the wound, you should leave it where it is. The object is likely to be helping to keep blood inside the body. The number one priority for stopping a bleed is that pressure is applied to the area where the bleed is coming from. This will slow the blood flow and allow the blood to clot, therefore stopping the bleeding. You can apply pressure to the wound using your hand, a cloth, or anything you can find. If it's a small wound, you could even use your finger to plug the hole. Blood takes around 10 minutes to clot, so you must apply pressure for at least 10 minutes. During this time, do not remove pressure to have a look, or the clotting process will need to start again from the beginning. Once the bleeding has stopped, you can then dress the wound with a bandage or something similar. This should only be done once the bleeding has stopped. To recap, the steps to take are: make sure it's safe to help. Identify the wound. If it's life-threatening, call 999. Find the source of bleeding. Apply pressure for at least 10 minutes and dress the wound. Remember, any stab wound is life-threatening, so call 999.
In the next chapter, we'll look at what to do when applying pressure isn't enough to stop the bleed. If you've applied pressure and the life-threatening bleed isn't stopping, or the wound is too deep to apply pressure, you can try to pack the wound. Packing the injury tightly with material enables you to apply pressure into it to stop the bleeding.
You can use any material to pack a wound, and the process is simple. Find the exact point of bleeding and pack the material tightly into the wound, like so. You can use any material, and it doesn't matter if this is a cloth, a piece of clothing, or whatever you find. Just like before, we now need to apply pressure into the wound for 10 minutes to allow the bleeding to clot.
It's important that you reassure the person. It's likely that packing the wound will be painful for them, so you'll need to explain that while it may hurt, it could save their life. A person can bleed out in under 5 minutes, so it is important that the bleeding is stopped before the paramedics arrive. If this is happening to you, remember that you can use the same process on yourself if you're able to do so. If applying pressure or packing the wound is not stopping the bleeding, the next step would be to consider using a tourniquet.
To recap, the steps to take are: make sure it's safe to help, use any material to pack the wound, find the exact point of bleeding, pack the wound tightly, apply pressure for at least 10 minutes, and call 999.
In this film, we've mentioned the word tourniquet a few times. I know that some of you will be unsure of what that is. A tourniquet is a device that is wrapped around an arm or a leg and then tightened in order to stop the flow of blood. You can create a makeshift tourniquet out of any material, and you can tighten it with a lot of different things such as a pen, fork, spoon, ruler, stick, piece of wood, or even a mobile phone. A tourniquet should be used if bleeding from an arm or leg cannot be stopped by packing or pressure.
This is how you create a tourniquet. You take a piece of material and wrap it around the limb. You can use any piece of material that you can find, the sleeve of a shirt, a scarf, or a school tie, for example. It just needs to be long enough to tie around the limb. First, tie one knot and then loosely tie a second knot. Insert a twisting device into the middle of your knot and then pull the ends tight to hold it in place. Now, start twisting to tighten the tourniquet around the limb. Keep twisting until the life-threatening bleeding stops. The tourniquet should be positioned about 5 centimeters above the wound towards the heart. It's really important to hold the twisting device tight until professional medical help arrives. If the life-threatening bleeding isn't controlled, try tightening it more or apply a second tourniquet just above the first if you have to.
If you try to tie a tourniquet around the knee or elbow joint, the bones prevent it from working properly. So wrap the tourniquet around higher up if you need to. A person can safely have a tourniquet on for up to 2 hours, so do not release it once it's in place. Wait for the emergency services to arrive. Make sure to record the time the tourniquet was applied and pass the information to the paramedics.
To recap, the steps to take are: make sure it's safe to help and call 999. Find some long material to wrap around the arm or leg. Find something to twist it tight. Position it 5 centimeters above the wound. Tighten until the life-threatening bleeding stops. Keep it tight, record the time, and if it's not working, you can apply a second tourniquet if you have to.
Now that we've covered the steps of how to stop a bleed, let's revisit our young people to see what they have learned.
So Nigel said that you should look like what type of cut it is, because if it's a deep one, you may need to pack it and apply pressure, but if it's not that deep, you just apply pressure. But also, if you've packed it and it's still not worked and the blood's still flowing, you might need to use a tourniquet.
You can pack a wound with almost anything. Like, you can use
Anything that's like a material, so you can take your sock off, or maybe you can use a bit of your tie or your blazer.
You do it for 10 minutes and you don't take it off while you've been applying pressure, because you'll have to restart doing it.
Yeah, so it's a piece of material that goes like about 4 fingers or about 5 centimeters up above the wound, and so you tie your knot first, begin to tie your second knot, then you put your object in, tie the knot over, then you begin to twist. Acts like a barrier and cuts off all your circulation.
You can use a stick, you can use a pen.
Fork, spoon, phone case, anything. When you've used the tourniquet, you record the time. It doesn't matter what you do it with.
I'd be a lot more confident than I was, because now I know like the steps to do, like I'd replay it in my head.
Now I'll be confident because I'll know what to do while I'm waiting for the ambulance to arrive.
Yeah, I'd be very confident.